In 1543, the first Europeans set foot in Japan. Far from the bustling capitals or raging battlefields, on the island of Tanegashima, a Chinese ship carrying Portuguese traders found itself blown off course and marooned in a land more foreign to them than we could ever imagine. But they had a bargaining chip that would not only ensure their survival, but change the course of history for Japan: guns. Their matchlock firearms, although primitive, were unlike anything previously seen by the ruling samurai lords. The ruler of the island was quick to buy these strange devices from the new arrivals, and set his best craftsmen to work on a project of reverse engineering. Despite coming close to success, some of the nuanced secrets of the matchlock's construction continued to elude them. But they would be saved by the fact that it wasn't just the Japanese who had realised how opportune this chance meeting of cultures had been. In 1544, from Portuguese colonies in Malaysia came fresh ships, this time carrying hefty stocks of newly produced matchlocks and ammunition, as well as blacksmiths with full knowledge of the tools and methods required to produce more. They were banking on the fact that the warlike samurai nobility would not want to wait to get their hands on the new weapons, and would pay extreme prices for the pleasure. And that price was not only to be paid in gold or fine goods. For the Portuguese had also brought missionaries of the Catholic Church, eager to spread the good word of their heavenly Lord to a new land, and gift salvation upon untouched souls. Any Japanese ruler who wished to purchase the exotic Western firearms would also be forced to make their peace with a similarly exotic Western god, a master god unlike any of the spirits worshipped in their native traditions of Shinto Buddhism. For many, this deal was too much to bear. To accept the words of unknown, uncultured foreigners as truth would be seen as foolish, weak, and dishonourable. But in the ports of eastern Kyushu, the large island that loomed to the north of Tanegashima, they found someone who would listen. This man looked upon the power of the matchlock, the power for any common peasant to end the life of the most skilled martial artist or most noble ruler in the blink of an eye, and he came to a realization that none would dare call him foolish, weak, or dishonourable as they lay at his feet in conquest. His name was Otomo Yoshiaki, leader of the prestigious Otomo samurai clan, a family of warlords that had passed on to him the rivalries, conflicts, and aspirations of generations of warfare. With firearms, all of these legacies could be honoured. That was his view on the matter, and he did not allow it to be challenged. Therefore, at the close of 1544, he decreed, with no consultation of his lords or vassal families, that the Otomo clan was officially in the service of the one true God, the master of all reality, known only by the cryptic words of the foreigners, only understandable through mysterious but worldly Chinese interpreters. Known as the nanban, or barbarians, the foreigners now walked among the Japanese, with the protection of the samurai now preventing their necks being slit by the blades at the hip of every skeptical native they passed. And as they walked, they saw a land rich in minerals, rich in knowledge, and most of all rich in people, despite generations of war. It was this latter wealth that held the most potential, but they had plenty of work to do before their plans could be set in motion. For now, they limited their interactions to preaching the messages of God. As the common people began to learn how to communicate with the Portuguese, some began to hear truth in their words. In the short span of a few months, news spread of the powerful mercy offered by the Catholic faith, unlike any spiritual power they could access before, and most who heard these words were seduced by them. So now, as spring breaks in the year of 1545, the Otomo domain of southern Bungo province finds itself almost entirely converted to the new faith. Its ports bustle with arms traders and missionaries alike, its towns thunder with the sound of daily firing drills, and in the halls of the ruling samurai, plans are drawn up to put their unique military advantage to devastating use. Their first target? The army of samurai that had gathered in the countryside in protest of the dealings with the nanban, calling for their treacherous lord to be overthrown. The samurai marched on the Otomo headquarters at Funai Castle, ready to show that their historic valor would overcome any foreign trickery. And inside, Yoshiaki drilled his new matchlock troops, ready to show that the age of honor was coming to an end. My closest allies are without fail men of a new breed, the man who has mastered the alchemy of black powder, the man who has tamed the primitive tongue of the barbarian traders, and the man who can wield a teppo with such inner peace as to score 100 hits out of 100 shots at 100 steps from his target. Welcome to Barbarian Masters, a Total War Shogun 2 narrative let's play using the Master of Strategy mod and playing as the Christian Otomo clan. We're getting things started with a battle in our home castle against an attacking army of samurai, not happy with the new policy set in motion by our leader Otomo Yoshiaki, who was hoping to use the influence of Westerners to gain himself dominance in the Sengoku Jidai. In this battle, he's deploying most of his melee forces outside of the castle, ready to receive the advancing samurai, for he has a plan in mind. You can see there's actually a large group of Ashigaru approaching from the south, and from the southeast and northeast comes the main body of their army, the samurai and the cavalry. The samurai going to be unmatched in combat, easily able to annihilate anything we can field in terms of melee units. However, we of course have the boon of our deal with the Christians ready to use. We've got teppo troops stationed on the wall, overlooking where the battle is about to take place. These powerful weapons have long range but are inaccurate, but most importantly, they're extremely deadly, even against armoured targets. So powerful warriors like these katana samurai don't stand all that much chance against sustained gunfire. They're also petrified of it, since it's such an unfamiliar and new weapon, and its power is unlike any weapon system the samurai had been using previously, so surely they are not going to be happy about the prospect of facing it here in this fight. And indeed, as they rush into this melee, we actually get them all the way down to wavering in terms of their morale. Their opponents will be these Ashigaru troops who, as I said, aren't going to be a match for them. As they get into this fight, their morale will go back up as they realize they can start winning in this melee engagement. But that may not save them, because the men up on the wall are still firing. They're just going to shoot into the melee, killing anyone who gets in the way of those deadly shots. Why have they stopped firing? The enemy are upon our men! The fighting has started. And tell them to keep firing. But our men will be in great danger. Tell them to keep firing. Yes, my lord. The bombardment suddenly seems to have the desired effect, because here we see this massive group of enemy Ashigaru, even though they have our side completely outnumbered in that area, just start to flee from the fight that they were going to win because of that fire coming from up above them. At the same time, the samurai are getting desperate, sending in their cavalry to fight with our spear troops, a very disadvantageous engagement for them. Plus, they're going to be taking some more traditional forms of fire from inside the castle. Our Ashigaru archers are raining arrows somewhat accurately onto the enemy side of those engagements. That's really our main hope of defeating enemies now, because our Ashigaru spearmen are going to be pretty much useless against the enemy's katana samurai. Nearby, there's a slightly easier fight going on. It's the enemy's Ashigaru fighting our drafted Ashigaru, who are even worse than regular Ashigaru, so they'll struggle. These are just levied troops, basically, fighting men with training. And making things more difficult is going to be these archers over here who are firing into that melee just as mercilessly as our own troops are being forced to do, hitting everything while their general moves up to take stock of what is going on. And what is going on is that his men are slowly being defeated. They still haven't got a chance to get inside the castle, so our men are safe up on those galleries to just continue bombarding all of those samurai troops with shot and arrows, and they're starting to take losses. And having all those cavalry fighting with our spearmen isn't going to be doing them any favours either. Our own samurai, the limited number we have, charge out to take part in this fight as it becomes clear that we are going to win. Also joining the attack is Kobayakawa Chikaharu, our second in command, leading his Hatamoto guards out to run after those enemy archers, and following close behind him is Otomo Yoshiaki himself, here to inspire the men as we rout the enemy off the field and lay complete waste to the rebel forces. And for Yoshiaki, this is an important moment. He has proven to everyone that his decision was at least somewhat correct, because his powerful weapons that he bargained for have given him a decisive victory against those who thought they couldn't possibly have been worth it. So now he's given himself a strong mandate to continue ruling over the clan and perhaps rule over the land.
The report has been prepared, Lord. I don't need it. Are the prisoners ready to march? Of course, my lord. I saw to it personally. March them to the docks. Lord Uno is waiting there to deal with them as per my instructions. Once he relieves you of the cargo, return to me. You will be expected to attend the War Council in 4 days. 4 days? I will have the prisoners marching day and night, my lord. Consider the work done. But may I ask one question, my lord? Ask it. Why send the prisoners to the docks? We have plenty of need for them in the town. Or we could even make an example of them to the locals. The example has been made already. Did you not hear the roar of those firearms and the screams of terror as men fled before them? Pay more attention, and the fate of the prisoners is not your concern. Of course, my lord. Apologies. I will return with all haste.
So now that we're here on the campaign map, we'll take a look at the strategic situation and the characters at our disposal. We have, of course, Otomo Yoshiaki, our faction leader, still somewhat honourable despite turning Christian, thanks to his many vassals, who we'll look at in a second, and Kobayakawa Chikaharu, our general, the second in command, who will be following Yoshiaki around just for now. We can take a look at the family as well. We do have a son, Yoshishige, who is not in the game yet, and our faction leader is married, meaning there is the possibility of additional children being added to the mix, and of course new generals can always come in later. So here is South Bungo, our starting region, with its ports connecting us to the Nanban world. South Bungo actually has 2 castles in it, this region. One feature of the Master of Strategy mod is that you can have multiple castles. The castle is controlled by one of our vassals, the southern one, so we don't have to worry about that for now. To the west, there's another region controlled by one of our allies, the ASO, and we also have a vassal for some reason up here on the west side of the island, kind of cut off from us. We can't really reach them by road. You can walk through that forest in the middle to get to them, but hopefully we won't need to, since they are vassalized to us. They will just sit there and be obedient. So in terms of what we're going to do, you can see I'm immediately moving north towards North Bungo. We've got another castle to take to completely unify Bungo province, currently controlled by the Ki clan. Now, they aren't at war with us, but they are a vassal of the Uichi clan, a historic enemy of the Otomo. They're actually over on the mainland, so we don't border them, and they can't attack us immediately, but they can send ships against us, of course, and since we are going to be somewhat dependent on our trade with the Nanban, that could be risky. We also do have enemies and allies in northern Kyushu, which we don't know all that much about right now, so we kind of need to go up there, but that is going to require going through North Bungo. So what we are going to do is just declare war on Ki and use the fact that they are a vassal of our enemy as an excuse if we need one. They're actually on okay terms with us right now thanks to our previous trading, but that's coming to an end. We'll start the war. We don't need to bring any of our allies or vassals in, and all they can do is ask their vassal masters, the Uichi, to join them in the war, but they're already at war with us, so that doesn't change anything. Now, we could simply storm their castle. We have more troops than them. However, in the Master of Strategy mod, it is harder to replenish troops, so you do want to be conservative and as sneaky as possible if you can, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. Yoshiaki takes most of his forces into enemy territory, but into a hidden position in the forests off to the west there, then leaves behind a single company of troops to simply stand on the road, violating the enemy territory and prompting them to come out to try and see us off. However, now his hidden main force comes into play, and we've got an advantageous battle outside of the castle where we can face the enemy on our own terms. It doesn't technically count as an ambush here, which kind of suggests the enemy knew we were here and just walked out anyway. I'm not totally sure. It's a little bit of an exploit, this tactic, actually, because if you were playing as the key, for example, when you came to this situation and realized another army was joining the fight, you could just call the fight off and walk back into the castle, but the AI can't do that as far as I know. So right now, their forces are going to see our bait unit of drafted Ashigaru simply disappear into the forests and suddenly realize what's actually going on. And there he is. The shame he feels spreads to his men, and they hide from the view of their ancestors. These madmen really think that the barbarian magic will save them from the consequences of their actions. All the spirits in the land will gather around us here and shield us from anything they throw at us. Our charge shall sail on a holy wind, and the martyrs of Funai shall be avenged. Now that they cannot hide behind their walls, we'll see what good their magic does them. Everyone, form up for battle, and call upon your guardian spirits to do the same. Our enemy must fight alone. The key forces seemed determined to attack us, and I was willing to let them because that meant I could stand here and start this fight with a bombardment of matchlock fire, firing in the vague direction at least of the enemy. The weapon's not sufficiently accurate to guarantee this is going to do much. Additionally, the enemy have a slight terrain advantage. You can see there's a slight rise, a tiny bump between us and them that their archers can shoot over, but our matchlocks can't. The enemy commander correctly assessed there that the matchlock is vastly inferior in a field battle to how it can be used in a siege fight. At best, we're going to get a few volleys off before the enemy get too close for these weapons to be of any use. However, those volleys may do significant damage, more damage than archer volleys will do at least. The fact we couldn't fire at the enemy until they were closer because of that hill may have worked to our advantage in that those closer range volleys would have done more damage, not really sure. But anyway, once the enemy get even more close, we're going to have to just get out of the way entirely, and our melee infantry will move forward. The enemy almost seeming unsure whether they want to engage, but eventually deciding to focus mainly on our center. They are attacking us with swordsmen, who are theoretically the counter to our spearmen, but we have absolutely loads of them, big numerical advantage in this fight, and the fact the enemy have focused so much on the center is going to make it extra easy for us to outflank them. And of course our archers behind the line can still fire, even if the matchlocks can't, so they should still inflict damage on the enemy's archers in the distance. Meanwhile, our bait unit actually ended up taking part in the battle and forcing the enemy to charge uphill into them with a superior unit, admittedly, but that uphill charge will have worn them out, and now the uphill fight will be hard for them, so we hopefully will still win there. And now it's time for our flanking forces to just be put into action. The enemy commander being super aggressive, attacking the center, and our spearmen, a very bad idea from him, taking arrows the whole time. He seems to think he's going to win regardless of what happens. Doesn't appear to actually be true. Kobayakawa and Otomo Yoshiaki going to attack the enemy's archers with their cavalry guards, a fine move. That'll take them out of the picture, and our infantry just completely surrounding everything. The enemy commander is killed at around this point. That's going to spell doom for the rest of his men as well. Many of them realize it and start trying to escape, but they've already been surrounded, making it extra hard to get away from this battlefield, and many of them will be slaughtered as they rout by our troops just swarming forwards all over them. This has been an absolutely complete victory over the Key clan. They fell for our trap almost willingly, believing that they would just win anyway, and we proved them completely wrong. Here are the results. You can see the enemy lost everything, our losses negligible in comparison. So now that they don't have that army, their castle is going to be looking nice and weak for us to go after it. So that's going to be what we want to do in this next turn. And we get a message there saying our concealed army was discovered, as I suspected. So I don't really know why they attacked. They must have just been very confident indeed. Anyway, we'll move on towards the castle. It's just got a couple of garrison units, nothing special. We can auto-resolve those guys out of existence and take the castle for ourselves. Although, of course, since we are a Christian clan, the battle to secure our region isn't over by just capturing it, because we need to additionally try and convert the population to Christianity, and that could indeed be the harder part of the actual operation of securing a province. We'll repair that castle up after the auto-resolve and admire the fact we now control both North and South Bungo, so that's all well and good, but we've already got those public order problems we'll have to look into. We do now, of course, board additional enemies. We've got the Asugi clan to the north who we'll have to worry about, so at least we can now go and conquer them. We've got ourselves a clear directive for what our next strategic move will be once it's safe enough to move our troops away. Right now, the people not happy with the fact we have taken control here. What we're going to have to do is now pass the baton to our Christian ministers to try and spread their faith to the region so that people don't mind having a Christian daimyo. The words of a Japanese street urchin through the words of an embroidered Chinaman. A fine display of hidden truths, you can imagine. If our man is telling these Japanese the truth about what I am telling him, I'll be surprised. But whatever he is saying, it seems to work. I have observed that while these Asiatic types hold an unconcealed disdain for Europeans, they are quite interested in the Holy Spirit. They don't understand it, but they sense that great power lies in knowing it. Such can be expected of people who are said to possess a great potential for intellect, if little else of value. And these Japanese appear more civilized than their southern cousins. They will be of use to heaven and earth, I am sure. Things were peaceful until autumn when, while sending a ship to block passages between Kyushu and Honshu for the Uichi clan potentially, I noticed the Sugi clan was sending an army down towards us. Nice to have this advanced warning, although we don't necessarily need it because we're already in a perfect position to defend against such an attack. Our army is right there on the border in a castle that blocks their route into our land, so they'll have to besiege our position if they want to do anything against us, and indeed they do come in for a siege, but even more interestingly, they come in for a siege assault. I expected them to just lay siege to the castle and make me attack them. That would have been the only real strategy that could have worked for them. Instead, they're going to attack the castle with a smaller army, and of course we're going to have our guns and bows on the castle wall, giving us a nice advantage before the fight even gets started. Overall, a disastrous choice from the Sugi commander. They clearly underestimate what we have here, or perhaps they're trying to make some sort of point. Either way, we can take a quick look at what their strategy is going to be. They attack in two groups. They've got a group coming from the north here, and another group coming from the south that became clear as time went on because it was mostly hidden in forests. Basically tons of Ashigaru troops that are going to rush at us, and similar to the previous castle battle against the samurai rebels, I've got some troops outside the castle to do battle with the enemy while our guns and bows slowly diminish the enemy's strength. Here we get a very nice downhill spear charge into the front of the enemy who did not look ready to receive that. So now that battle is going to rage, and you can see the enemy are pulling their second unit into behind their first unit. That's going to make them extra easy to surround, and we certainly have the numbers to do the surrounding. You can see I've got troops everywhere, so we'll just wait for opportunities to arise. Once the enemy commit everything, we'll simply envelop them. On the north side, things are basically turning into an archer battle. The enemy have some archers down there across that river firing up at our archers. Our guys are in cover, so I'm quite willing to let this fight go on. I think we'll win it eventually. And the enemy did have assault infantry here, but they don't want to make the dangerous climb up the north wall of the castle, so they actually started coming around to the south. But they need to arrive soon, because on the south, the first wave is in trouble. You can see I've brought some samurai around behind the enemy's Ashigaru, or most of them at least. A few of them went off for a quick walk in the woods, then remembered what they were doing and started jogging back to take part in this fight. But these Ashigaru are not going to enjoy this. They try to escape from the samurai by running forwards through our Ashigaru. Some of them actually succeed at pushing through our lines to escape, but a lot of them will be killed in that action. Meanwhile, another unit that was coming towards another part of the wall is just being completely surrounded by our troops. They break, and now that they're broken, they're in huge trouble. They can't escape. They're going to take pretty much complete losses in that little engagement, just like you would expect. So now it was just a case of killing the forces who were coming around from the north to make an attack on the south. They arrive too late, since all their comrades are dead, so now we can just form up to face them, sending archers to the wall to pepper them with fire. That's not really going to do all that much. We can just really quickly rush our tons of infantry against them, and they are going to quickly realize that they have no ability to win, and because they are drafted troops, they have very, very low morale. So you don't really need to defeat units like this, you just need to outflank them and they'll leave, as we see here. So they're going to start running away, many of them will be killed as they escape, but because they are unarmoured, they're kind of fast, so they are going to be able to escape a little bit better than heavier units might be, although we can shoot them on the way to inflict some extra damage and just make sure the Sugi are going to be sufficiently punished for their stupidity, and of course that they can't do something like this again. The last nail in the coffin was of course going to have to be the enemy commander, most likely their daimyo, who is running towards us now, perhaps coming to see how his attack on the south side of the castle went. I had hidden my forces in this little valley here. He discovers them as he advances, but he just keeps coming towards us even as he discovers the unit standing right in front of him. He's going to plow in, he's made his decision, and the commander himself actually plows all the way through our men, getting to the back. An extremely valiant charge, the rest of his men not having that much luck and getting caught up fighting our troops. I guess our guys were surprised at the speed with which the enemy attacked, but once that surprise wears off, they're going to be in trouble because they can't take us all down here. We have mostly spearmen fighting against mostly cavalry, the ideal situation. And after a short engagement in which gunfire also supported our troops from up on the wall, the enemy commander died, and that finally is going to be the end of this battle. All of those archers out on the northern part of the battlefield just left after having taken moderate casualties from the arrow fire that we were providing for them. That's a decisive victory. Didn't really expect anything else, but it still went perfectly. We did the business in a very clean fashion, making sure we didn't really lose much, and that of course can gain us an advantage against the Sugi if we want to counterattack, which we probably should if we can. There are the full results, the enemy losing something like 10 times the amount that we lost. A disastrous assault from the Sugi clan. So I'm guessing they just wanted to do something. They wanted to prove they had some form of strength and didn't want our influence to be coming their way, but all they've done is lose everything. So of course that means we can move out and take their territory potentially without too much of a fight. I'm going to try it right now. I can't move all of my units because of public order, so we'll just send what we can to try and completely eradicate the Sugi before they rebuild and cause any more trouble. At the same time, you can see I've been taking trade nodes throughout the opening of the campaign, a vital strategy for the Otomo because we are going to need that money. Matchlock units are expensive, and of course many of the Japanese clans may not wish to trade with us because they don't like the fact we've converted to Christianity, but all things considered, the start of the campaign has gone particularly well for the Otomo and for Otomo Yoshiaki, whose decisions are bearing fruit. But of course this is still early days, so I hope you'll join me for the rest of this series to see exactly what destiny the Otomo's gambit will bring them. The destruction of the samurai rebels removed plenty of Yoshiaki's local rivals from Bungo, and not only via their deaths. Prisoners taken from the Battle of Funai and from the campaign against the Key of northern Bungo were spared the fate of toil in the fields or at oars, instead being sold to the Europeans and sailed away to unknown destinations. Many disagreed with the practice, as they did with any trade with the barbarians, but the prices these prisoners fetched were hard to turn away from. Clearly the world had need for dispossessed men even more than Japan did, and Yoshiaki had been earmarked to become one of the leading suppliers. That is all for this episode, so thank you so much for watching, and special thanks to the OfficiallyDevin patrons for making this happen. Yoshiaki is going to find himself in a pretty dangerous situation thanks to his ambitions, but he'll find a way to make a use of it in the next episode of Barbarian Masters.